Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman, we welcome our guests to yet another episode of the Richest Men in Town. We had some time today to spend with someone I've known a long time, Gus Koernig, and talk about his journey and his life. And it was a lot of fun. There was some real depth in some of the things that Gus taught today. What's standing out to you from our conversation?
First of all, one of the best names of any guest we've had.
Absolutely.
Right? Gus Koernig showed up, crushed it. I love that. I love that description. He's a word guy, and he's able to walk us through that journey and that path. But he talks about a rich vein.
I did love that too. Yeah.
Like a rich vein, and let's mine in that. And I think that he just gave us so much to mine. And again, in true Richest Men in Town fashion, it's like, where did the 2 hours go?
Yeah.
Where did the 2 hours go? There were so many things where it's like, man, I would love to circle back and revisit. I love the way that his thoughts and the things he added to our conversation added to what we were thinking coming into the space.
Yeah.
Right. We're thinking about change, and he's telling us he's in a community college in his 60s.
Oh man. Yeah.
Let that sink in, people. Right.
Yeah.
He's hanging out at Mesa Community College, and he's like 62, 63 years old taking classes. And he says in that experience, the grades that he got changed the way he saw himself.
Yeah, I love
in
that
his
idea.
60s.
Yeah, like I just love that idea of him talking about finding successes and letting those be, embracing what you're good at, right? And what he wasn't good at when he was in his 20s, he became good at in his 60s. I just love that idea of
wipe the timeline.
Yeah.
Wipe the timeline, figure out what you're good at, and grow that.
Yeah.
Right? Grow the good. You want to write? Sit down at a typewriter, start banging keys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, there were some things tonight that he talked about. He talked about his children, and that he put together a list of things that are important in raising children. And I'm not going to talk about that. You'll have to listen to hear that. But
he straight up says, "Get your pen ready. Write this down."
Yeah, because this is the list, and he was spot on. Because it made me change my list a little bit. So
it made me change what I'm going to do after I'm off the phone with you. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, like I gotta call. I gotta make a few things happen as a result. And that's how I know I'm in a cool space. As I'm listening to Gus, I'm thinking about me, like he says, right? I'm with me all the time.
Yeah.
And if we are struggling with hope, man, Gus is going to give it to you.
For sure.
Gus is going to give you some hope. And part of that hope comes from looking back and seeing what has happened and how things, how we were able to overcome some things. And, and God's been good to us in the past, and he's going to be good to us in the future, and things will work out. And I love that message.
Yeah. The message of hope, the message of we talked about comparison a little bit. We talked about bad wiring, removing debris. I mean, there was a lot of good things covered tonight by Gus. So, hopefully, Mike, you showed your notes to Gus and I, and it looked a little bit like A Beautiful Mind, but I think there's some nuggets in there, right, for us to find. So hopefully our listeners will come prepared with a piece of paper and a pencil, take some notes, but at the end of it, look at those notes and find something that you can implement today, because Gus dropped some science on us. So enjoy your time with Gus Koernig on the Richest Men in Town.
So Tyler, I step into the richest man in town studio this morning.
Yeah.
And it has become a rap studio.
Oh, I love that. This
A.J.
is
Freeman is rap god in training.
He's laying down tracks.
Yeah, like he's using our Audible. He's using my mic. He's got a buddy, and they've been dropping rhyme.
Oh man, does he have a stage
Spit
name
verse? Yet? Spit and verse.
What's his name? What does he go by here?
I don't know, but actually, he played it for me last night. It's good.
I want to hear it. You know, you got to send it to me. I know. I have no doubt. I want to hear it, man.
There's no way I could like just play it for you, right? Without him, that'd be bad because this thing. I mean, it could go viral. Like
yeah, but I do think that there's an opportunity for like a we got.
I think he needs to debut it here. You know what I mean?
I agree. Come on now.
Let's bring him on the podcast and let's debut this stuff because it's actually like I was bracing myself, right?
Yeah.
When the kids come to you and it's like, hey, Dad, check this out. And you're just bracing yourself because it's like, you got to have that face, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Like this.
But I was blown away. He's got a buddy.
Yeah.
Him and his buddy. And it started out as one song.
Okay.
Going to YouTube and getting free tracks, like free tunes.
Yep.
I'm hoping that's royalty free tunes.
Let's hope so.
Right.
But hey, right now, who cares at this point, right?
Right. He needs to take our legal advice, and you just go until you get a letter from a lawyer, and then you feel flattered.
Yeah. Come on now. Right. If Dre is sending you a lawyer or sending you a letter because you got some stuff that's serious enough for him to look at, then yeah, things are looking good.
And the lyrics are witty, downright borderline lyrical genius.
I'm really excited to hear this, and tell Abe if I don't get in the invite to listen, I'm going to be seriously offended.
Yeah, let's go, because he can't go social media. He's got to debut it here.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, I agree, 100%.
I'm gonna book this guy. I'm gonna book him.
Let's do it.
And I got a confession to make. Vulnerable space here.
Okay.
Chess.com, dude. The addiction's back.
Oh no, dude.
Had a flare up. Had a relapse. Big time. I've probably been playing 2 to 3 hours of chess every day.
Wow.
And I knew I had a problem when last night on my way out, dramatic come from behind victory. On my way out, the guy chatted up, dude, you got so lucky. And I started yelling at my phone.
Well,
I started yelling at my phone, and I might have even done a teabag stance here in the house.
Well, step one is
at that time, Kelly looked at me. At that time, Kelly looked at me, and I realized I've lost control.
Yeah, she says, "Are you arguing with your virtual friends?"
I said, no, you are prey is not my friend. And then I realized that might be the dumbest thing I've ever said. But here's how it started, right?
Yeah.
I get a new computer, and I'm learning about the computer.
Right.
And I see that it's got a chess game.
Oh, there it is.
Gateway.
It's like you said the other day, some people can throw a quarter in a slot, and then it becomes their thing. And some people just flip on the computer, and there's chess staring at them, and that's their thing, man.
Yeah. And here's the kicker for me. Like whatever genetic code I'm struggling with, when I shut it off, guess what I'm thinking about?
Chess.
Yeah. Opening moves, right? Struggle's real. So this morning, deleted it from my phone, and we're back on the wagon trying to figure this out. And that's appropriate because we've been thinking, right? Yeah. We've got some fun that we're going to have with a friend of yours today. Yeah. And leading into the conversation, we've been thinking about this change struggle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Struggle is real, man. I mean, it's like, it's unavoidable, but you made some good points when we were kind of talking back and forth about this. Maybe pacing yourself through change, I mean, some change we have no control over, right? It just comes at us, and we either choose to, to make the necessary adjustments, or we sort of get run over like a wave, right? It just goes over the top of us. But sometimes we get caught up in this idea that, there's certain things that we want to change about ourselves or about our situations. And it's maybe it's just we're overanalyzing, and we get paralysis from what we look at is too much change, right?
Yeah, I love that thought of paralysis, because I think the key word you said there is things about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you and I are in the habit, thanks to Monk Manual, of checking in.
Yeah.
Right. Checking in on the different roles that we have and responsibilities in our lives and the different aspects of our lives, and it's like golf, right? Some days you're crushing it off the tee and you can't hit a 3-foot putt.
Yeah.
And
right.
Some days you just get anywhere on the green and stuff's going in. So I struggle with that paralysis. I don't know about you, but every once in a while, and this is where I'm at, like, honestly, right now, everything I look at is a loose end.
Yeah.
Everything I look at is something somebody's expecting me to tie up and get done.
Yeah.
And when you look out there at the bogeys on that radar screen, you start to freeze, right? And then you start to get into, like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
There's so many things about myself that I would like to change. There are some things that are rolling. And thanks to this program, honestly, there are some people that I've met, there's some conversations that I've had, and there's some changes that have taken root, and I'm appreciative and I'm grateful for that. And there are some aspects of my life I wouldn't change for nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's some aspects, like those side yards everybody's got, right? Where it's like, man, I gotta get going on that. And then it's like, okay, and I gotta get going on that, and I gotta get going on that. And then pretty soon we've got 17 things we're trying to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, look, I mean, if we're all, if everyone's honest, right there, and you're compiling a list, it's a list, right? I mean, if we're honest, it becomes a list. It's how we attack the list.
Well, and when you say list, like, change isn't a to-do list,
right?
It's a project list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There's multiple steps involved in the changes.
Yeah.
Like, if we're looking at finances or relationships or physical health, it's not like okay, sweet, went to the Y, I'm done, check.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
right.
no. And I think that's where the problem is when there's kind of initiative overload, nothing takes root, because you can't maintain and establish the habits that you need to actually make that change a reality.
Yeah. And then the other, and I like that a lot. That you don't give it enough time for those new practices to take root and become something where you can see measurable change, right? But I also think there's this, going back to that idea of change that happens that's out of your control, right? Like, I had this idea of adaptability, and being able to say, well, how do I adjust and embrace this change that I'm faced with? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a learned skill as well.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of, like, there's these two things, and I'm thinking of Brian Grove. Like, let's try to hold these two thoughts at once, right? There's an urgency about it, but yet change requires patience.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody comes to you, or a life situation presents itself, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is going to require me to change.
Yeah.
I got to jump. And then you jump in with urgency. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge that change, that desired outcome, is going to be a result of time, right?
Yeah.
Patience with ourselves, patience with other people having patience with us as we go through this change, communicating with the people that matter to us about the fact that we need to change.
Yeah, I liked that. One of the things you mentioned this morning was that idea of getting real and accurate feedback, right, about change and being accountable to someone. I like that a lot. I mean, sometimes it's tough to hear, but I think if you're embracing that process, it's not as tough to hear, right? Because you're anticipating that. Like, tell me where I'm off the rails a little bit here.
Okay, and get ready, right? And get ready. It's like companionship inventory.
Yeah.
like a shout out to coworkers that I have, and I'm in a new spot, new position, and I'm throwing some things out there, and I say something like, "Yeah, I know that I'm really struggling with this," and they'll say, Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And it's,
and you've got to be in a humble place where it's like, all right, help me.
Yeah.
Right. Help me get better. And then too, the thought is help me put systems in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because systems are going to endure a lot better than just willpower.
Yeah.
Here's an analogy. In my backyard, I got a corner where I don't know what's going. Sprinkler isn't working.
Right.
We look out there and there's a patch of brown. It's like, all right, well, I'll fix this. And so I, being the genius handyman person that I am, I grab a hose, right? And I'm out there and I use it as a little check-in in the morning, right? Getting out there, watering the lawn, things start greening up, right? Well, the problem with that is I'm not fixing the sprinkler. So the second that I stop taking the hose out there, we're right back where we were, right? And I think that sometimes in life we do that. Well, I'm going to put an extra effort there, but we're not necessarily putting effort into a system that's going to make that automatic.
Right. It's that I'm going to run 2 miles a day, but eat a double every night kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Right? We're not addressing the real problems that maybe
you just hit me between the eyes with that, brother. Okay, let's get into this though too, and I think that this and then we'll get into what we're about today. But and I'm interested in hearing what our guest has to say about this. I just want to throw this out there, and I've felt this before, and I'm sure that our listeners, and maybe even you're in this spot, but like at a certain point, I think of our friend Dave Hill and his friend Boris, the robot. Boris is made out of scrap parts, and every once in a while that scrap man's voice, right? You're trash. You're not worth anything. And I think sometimes that self-talk comes in of like, this is hopeless. How many times have I tried to make this change?
Yeah.
And I can't. What would you say to that?
I mean, that's a tough spot. And look, I've been there, I think everybody's been there on some level. I don't know. I think if we look at it from a spiritual side, right? As far as change is concerned, spirituality, right? Repentance is change. Conversion is change. Perfection is change, right? So if we're on that, if those are the things that we're looking at, I think built into that on the spiritual side is that very important aspect of grace, right? We've got to be willing. Who was it that we talked with a few weeks back that said extend grace to ourselves, right? And I think that that's an important part of it. We're always wanting, when we're in a situation where we've done something where it impacts someone else, we hope that person will extend grace towards us and let us move past that and rectify that situation. But we have to be willing to extend grace to ourselves and say, look, I got back on chess.com, right? but I'm moving past this, right?
And I went hard. I went hard.
But that, that's the reality, right? I recognize it. I'm not going to sit here in this rut. I'm going to extend grace to myself and say, hey, I'm going to give it another shot and move forward. And that's the beautiful thing about life, right? Is that even though we find ourselves in patches that are really rough, that maybe we've put ourselves there, there's always a second chance. And it's that self-talk, right? That I can't, or people won't let me, or they won't respect me, or whatever that thought is.
Yeah. And can we acknowledge right here, right now, that without that ownership, grace cannot operate in dishonesty.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Right. Like in order for, it's kind of like a chess move, right? To get to grace, we've got to be honest.
Yeah.
Once we're honest, then we're able to incorporate the power of that principle. And we can get into this for hours, because when you get into the spiritual side of things, when we are feeling overload, man, drop to your knees and just say, where do I start?
Yeah. Yeah.
What lack I yet?
Right.
What can I do? And I can guarantee you the answer isn't going to be 15 things. And the answer isn't going to be a big thing.
Yeah. Right.
It's going to be hey, do this little thing.
Yeah.
right?
I love that. I think that's important, right? That
well, like you shared in the text exchange leading up to this was that Winston Churchill, right? To improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often.
Yeah.
Course correction, a little bit here, a little bit there. And I think that if we are feeling hopeless, one of the things that, and Mike Burke would say this too, our friend, one of the things that would help is re-goal, right? If we've got an ambitious goal and it's like, man, I need to save $1,000, or I need to, lose 20 pounds. Then it's just like, well, how about, can I lose 2 pounds?
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. And honestly, that's been something I've been working on for myself lately, is looking at these bigger goals that I have and trying to work those down to smaller bite-sized pieces that I can say, that I can, that are attainable, right?
Yeah.
I can say,
what's your radar? What would you, not that we're experts. We are not experts, right?
Not experts.
Disclaimer. Right. But how many, when you look at that, reframing goals into things that are attainable, goals plural, like what should we be juggling?
Gosh, like how many different goals are we looking at?
How many things are you working on? Are you working on different aspects? Because I think different aspects kind of make sense, right? Like I've got a health, I've got a finance, I've got a relationship, and then as you can check in with those. But when you go to each of those and you have 3 or 4 in each of those, that gets a little crazy.
It does get a little crazy, but I think that because maybe I do have a lot, because I'm not an expert. So I'm going to tell you, like for me, it's my physical health, right? It's my relationship with my family, like as a total. It's my financial situation and my professional situation and my spiritual life, right? So that's a lot of stuff, but in those, I'm looking at small things. We had a discussion the other day about being able to do the things that you hate. And sometimes that's sort of where I'm at, right? Like running, I hate it, but I'm not going to run a marathon. I'm going to run a mile a day. My spiritual health, right? I want to be able to recite chapter and verse, Mike Freeman, but I can't. And so I'm committed to reading a page a day. That's my goal, of scripture. And so it's those things. And I feel like when, what's really cool about that for me personally is when I've had a day where I've hit those little goals in all of those areas, I feel really good about myself and where I'm at. There's an instant reward that I feel. So that's
well, and I think that's patterned after a lot of wisdom, right? I mean, I think of Luke 2:52, and we talk about this with our children and our youth. Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. What if you could just break down your life into a couple quadrants?
Yeah.
And so you've got, like you said, you got your relationships. Maybe that's social. You got your your emotional and your spiritual, maybe intellectual. And so as you do those things, and there's just small and simple things happening in each of those, that gets back to that scorecard idea. That's pretty easy to check in at the end of the day and say,
absolutely.
And drip by drip, right? Small and simple things confound the wise. Like, I don't need to read 5 chapters of scripture every morning. Like Stephen Mitchell, he starts reading till it hits him. Yeah. And it could be 1 or 2 verses, and then he's immersed in 1 or 2 verses, right?
Yeah.
Love that.
No, I do too. I love that. Well, look, this morning we have the opportunity to sit down, spend a little bit of time with Gus Koernig. He's in Phoenix. He's going to join us from Mesa, Arizona, as a matter of fact. I have known Gus. He's a friend of my family's, and since I was a little kid. He's good guy. He's got, he's raised a family. He's gone through some stuff in his life, and I'm looking forward to learning some wisdom. I'd love to learn how he handles change. Right.
Let's throw that at him.
Yeah, let's do it. Why don't we open the doors and let the sunshine in from Mesa, Arizona?
Yeah. So, hey, any chance he's got like Tyler Gould growing up dirt on you? Because I would be all about that. I would be all about some dirt.
I think when I was around Gus, I was probably really small, man. So I don't even remember. He'd probably remember the dirt better than I would. So,
well, exciting things are happening out in Mesa. I just recently saw that temple reconstruction. I think that they just had an opening on that, so that's kind of cool.
And Phoenix just passed Philadelphia, your Philadelphia, as the 5th fastest growing city in America.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, huh? So,
well, I'm a AZ fan, except for those dang Cardinals.
I'm an AZ fan except for that dang Heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm up here. We've got the Dixie Fire. People around the country probably been hearing about that. So we've got 106, I think, scheduled today with like zero visibility and hazardous air quality. So,
yikes!
This episode is not brought to you by the City of Reading Tourism Department.
Yeah, my mom sent me some pictures yesterday of when she was driving around of just the the outside. It looked like a gloomy, cloudy day, but it was all smoke. So
yeah, and so you wake up and you look out there and you almost think like I'm on the coast, right? Oh, this is like, all right, so I got some ocean, I got some marine layer.
Yeah, we're kind of socked in this morning. It's not bad.
Put on a cardigan. And then it's 107.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah,
dude.
thoughts and prayers go out. I mean, Dixie Fires wiped out the town of Greenville. Historic gold mining town. Gone.
Where is Greenville in relation to where you're at?
Greenville's up by Lake Almanor. So there's entire towns like Chester's been evacuated.
Oh man,
it's over 500,000 acres.
One of my favorite golf courses, man, Lake Almanor. That's a beautiful golf course. Yeah,
Bailey Creek.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I was just talking to someone the other day that they grew up in the Lake Almanor area. Believe it or not, that's about as small as you get, right?
That's about as remote and rural as you get, and they land down your neck of the woods.
Yeah, their daughter's on my daughter's soccer team, so kind of crazy.
Gus and Glenda.
Yep, that's us. All right.
Hey, there it is.
Sounds like me, doesn't it?
Yes, we hear you now. Awesome.
Gus, welcome to the richest men in town. How are you?
I'm good. Good to be with you fellas.
Yeah.
How are things in Mesa, Arizona this morning?
We're getting a lot of rain.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's the time of year when the weather usually wants to kill us, but that's not happening right now. So
gosh,
we're pretty tickled about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the West, right? We can use the moisture.
All Yeah, we were just talking
send
about
that up our way. You could send that up our way. That'd be great.
Are you guys cooking up there?
Yeah. We're like you. I think you and I compete for like the hottest place on the planet a couple times every summer.
Yeah. Central Valley gets hotter as you go to the extremes.
Yep.
Bakersfield's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Lovely this time of year.
In so many ways.
Yeah, that's right. There's been a lot of people have said that, and I don't know.
Yeah, edit that out.
Right.
Hey, Gus, how long you been in Mesa?
I've been in Mesa, let's see. Got to be 14 years.
Okay. Wow.
I've been in Arizona about 16.
Okay.
And, was in Phoenix for 2 years and then moved over to the East Valley. And so here we are.
Here you are. Well, love Arizona. I spent some time in Arizona. It's a beautiful place.
That's right. You lived, in Chandler for a while?
Yeah. So we were in that kind of Gilbert, Mesa, Chandler sort of area. Yeah. I moved a couple different times, but did school out there, and my wife taught out there, and paid for my school basically. And
I gotta warn you, Californians are coming in droves your way probably.
Yeah, well, I mean our people, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I was reading an article the other day that said that Phoenix, Arizona has surpassed Philadelphia as the 5th fastest growing city in America.
5th largest.
5th largest. Okay.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing big city in the country.
Okay. Wow, that's great.
Yeah. I know that because I wrote a story about it the other night for radio.
Oh, did you? Yeah, that's right. So Gus is an author And Gus, we're going to get into some stuff that you're doing.
Hold up. Okay,
so we'll get into some stuff here.
Yeah, let's figure out what we what there is to learn from Gus. Tyler, why you like this guy?
Well, I've been lucky to know Gus for a long time, since I was a little kid, and his family lived around our family, and Gus has always been in and out of my family's lives, and has had an impact. So, it's one of those things when you're a young person and you see people come in and out, and you don't know that you're doing it, but you're taking mental notes, of people. And Gus has been a guy that I've always enjoyed being around and listening to his wisdom, and has had an impact, a positive impact on me and the people that I love the most. So,
wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
How about that? It's like payday, Gus.
I'm telling you. Yeah, I'll take that to the bank.
So, Gus, when you and Tyler start having this conversation about joining in, I know you're often contributing to the town, right? To talk on the town. And when Tyler reaches out to you and extends this invitation to be on the podcast, what kind of goes through your brain?
I was hugely complimented. I was just flattered beyond description. My sense is that I'm not exactly your target demographic.
We run the gamut.
That's right. We were all over the place, guys.
Okay. So when, I don't know how other people regard me. And I treat everyone like they're my contemporary, which is ridiculous in a lot of cases. But there it is. So when someone who's, of my children's generation wants to spend some time with me, that's quite gratifying.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I know that in our time together, we'll some other people will find out why I think so highly of you, Gus. So I'm excited about that.
No pressure.
Well,
no pressure at all.
I could go. I think I could dig into that comment you just made about not knowing how people regard us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gets into the spirit of this podcast. I mean,
yeah.
We talk a little bit about George Bailey and that It's a Wonderful Life, and we just don't know the impact that we have. We don't know how people regard us, and I kind of dig that thought. And and if we can step outside of ourselves and see the impact that we have, I think that if we can spend a couple hours doing that, and selfishly speaking, Gus, I know that there's some things that your children's generation needs to learn.
Mine too.
And I'm all ears. And so I think that's the beauty of the conversation that we're going to have, right? Before you came in, Tyler and I were talking a little bit about change, about the struggles that, we kind of got real, and I personalized some things a little bit, but just the struggles of change, right? And some of those problems with change. And whether it's taking on too much change, whether it's telling yourself, oh, you've done that so many times, you could never change that, right? In your experience, where you stand in life, looking back and looking forward, what would you say about managing successful change in life?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to answer that like I know what I'm talking about. It always really rankles me when I hear someone say, well, that's just the way I am. I find that really offensive. I feel like we're always a work in progress. At least that's the plan. I hope I'm a better person today than I was a year ago, and not as good a person as I'll be a year from now. I look at that in terms of what I do professionally. Being a broadcast journalist, being an author, being a writer, being a photographer, and just being a person. Being a father. If I could have a do-over, I would start mine at 11 p.m. on July the 8th, 1971. That was the moment I became a father. And I would love to have known at 23 what I know now, 50 years on. There's always the risk that, okay, do you want a 23-year-old guy who has limited impulse control knowing what someone with more experience knows? It's gonna depend on the 23-year-old guy. But gosh, I've heard people say, I have no regrets. I have more regrets than I can count. And about 99% of them have to do with things I did and said and things I did not do and did not say when I was raising my children. Boy, there's a heavy start.
Yeah, I love that thought, though. Can we talk about that just for a second?
Sure.
I love I have heard people say I don't have any regrets, and I can respect that. I admire that, I guess, because I have a few in my back pocket I'd like to unload. But what do you do with those regrets? I mean, what do those do? Are they just sitting there weighing on your mind constantly, or how do we manage that?
This is actually very timely that we're talking about this, because they can be crippling. I can look at every struggle my children who are all adults. My youngest is 34. I can look at every struggle that they're having and thinking, oh man, that goes back to, all the different times and ways I let them know they weren't okay. And it doesn't matter that was the message that I got as a child. We don't want to pass along the same poison that infected us. But I'm going to get delve into the religious realm here. In my patriarchal blessing, it tells me that I will be able to recognize when the devil's afflicting someone, and that I will be able to cast him out. And I realized that that's what was happening to me. That my constantly ruminating on all the things that I wish I had done differently or not done at all, as I said a moment ago, was crippling. And it occurred to me, I think one night at work, that's what it was. That's what was messing with me. And I came home that morning. I get off work at 6, so there's not a lot going on. And went out on my back patio and cast him out. And that's been, I guess that was earlier this week. And I got to tell you, every day since then has been better than the days and months leading up to that. All of us have some bad wiring that we've got to pull out, and some of us have more than others, particularly when the more birthdays you've had. At what age do you have it all together? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you 73 is not the number.
Hey, so you said do-over. Let's go back to that moment. I love that thought, right? I think that if you could, what would you say to that guy on July 8th, 1971? And I say that because right now you could be in the ears of somebody who's right there.
I would say, whatever else you do, love that little person. There's a list of things that we need to do as parents. You might want to write this down. Here's the list.
Right.
Love your children. That's the whole list.
Yeah.
And I wish so much that I had not been so consumed by the details. I wish I hadn't been operating out of fear. That if I don't make this happen for this child, they'll be irretrievably lost, which is nonsense. But I wish that I had come out of love instead of out of fear, because I came out of fear a lot.
Gosh, that's a powerful thought. I think, like, as you're saying that, the thought that there's two thoughts that I want to touch on real quick. One, Gus, you talked about that idea of casting the devil out, and it's interesting because I think that, as I read that, as you read your patriarchal blessing, if I were reading that, my interpretation would be, how do I do that for other people? Right?
Exactly. Yep.
And I love the flip on that how do I do that for myself? And then I guess the next thing is it naturally can become something you can do for other people once you've had that experience for yourself. I that idea of introspection and be able to look inwardly and say, okay, what's the, what is it that's holding me back from where I want to be or who I want to be or what I want to achieve?
Yeah.
Can be difficult. And that's one of the things Mike and I were talking about this morning. I think that, sometimes we look inwardly and we find this giant list, or we start to put together this giant list of flaws or wherever we're at. And then sometimes it becomes this paralysis by analysis. And I think that's where that whole idea of, well, I am who I am and I can't change it. Right?
Yeah. And I just find that so offensive.
Yeah, I agree I love the way you say that. It's offensive. I agree with you. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, but I agree with you. It discounts a lot of things that maybe we believe otherwise as well, right?
Well, yeah. And particularly within our faith community, the top of the list is eternal progression. Well, that means change.
Yeah.
So to say, well, this is the way I am, I can't change. Well, you should find something else to do for 2 hours on Sunday morning.
Yeah,
because we don't have anything for you if that's the case.
Right? If it's not changing you, we're not doing it right.
Well, exactly. And I believe that's true outside of a religious setting.
I love the idea of that bad wiring you talk about. Right? It's like it's kind of like Russell M. Nelson's invitation to remove debris, because really it does come down to that idea of the iceberg and what's on top of the water that we see and what's underneath. And so many times we're trying to address behavior by talking about the thing that we see, the thing that other people see. And that notion of wiring, or even in the code, right? Like going under the surface and looking into past experiences. And, Tyler, we're always talking a little bit about, it's like life is sometimes like a complex math problem. And if you messed up step 2, you don't keep going,
right?
Thinking if I just work this thing out, it's all going to come out and I'm going to get the right answer at the end.
Right.
You got to go back. And sometimes we don't go back.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're struggling with like, why isn't this change sticking? Why can't I become that new creature? Why can't I, be a better disciple? And it's like, if we're quiet and we allow some space, there's probably going to be some, hey, pick up the phone and call that person, right? Hey, reach out here. Hey, let's do this. And again, it's not going to be some dramatic, monumental thing, but the problem is the world is noisy. We've talked before about the world's not going to ever be slower than it is right now.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, right.
And at that speed, a lot of this important work just doesn't get done.
Right. And a lot of, the debris that has to be hauled out, that's garbage we didn't dump. We have things imprinted on us from the moment of birth. And there are times I will kind of step back and see my reaction to something. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I'm channeling my grandfather, who was the father figure in my life until I was 11. And I mean, he loved me unconditionally. Every person should have one person who loves them, beyond description. I had that from my grandfather, but he did not live an exemplary life. And his anger was extremely keen and very, very close to the surface. And I will find myself reacting way out of proportion to something. And I'll stop and I'll think, this is nuts. I'm channeling Larry Rothman.
Yeah, but
the point being, there's stuff there.
Yeah,
that was getting layered on before we had any choice about it.
Yeah. I love that. And I think maybe the realization of that or the honest self-conversation of that, right? Of where do some of these behaviors or some of these habits or some of these ideas come from?
Right.
Maybe changing that becomes a little bit easier if we can kind of parse that out and say, gosh, this had this impact on me. I don't need to be this person. Right. I mean, I have that conversation with myself all the time. Like there's people that I love in my life that maybe they're not 100% what I want to be in all areas, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm taking what my internal conversation is take what is good, right?
Yeah.
And figure out how to stick that chip into the computer.
Yeah, take what serves you.
Right. And delete the other thing. But I think that sometimes while I'm going through that process, I'm still hanging on to some of the old things that, that I've been around since I was a little kid or whatever.
Yeah. It's, I liken that to, living in a house that's drafty and the floors squeak and the doors don't close quite right. And the carpet smells, but you know where everything is.
So in that process,
so you stay there.
Yeah, right, yeah. In that process, if there's love, then there's no judgment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to take the gift that's given. We're going to take all those things from your grandfather and say, thank you. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to say, yeah, but you were this or this or this or this. Right. I mean, because everybody can say, everybody has a list of things about each of us that probably aren't the best.
My grandfather lived to be 95. So I was how old? I was almost 50 when he died.
Wow.
And I cannot remember a judgmental comment from him ever. I could do no wrong, which is crazy, but maybe it's not, maybe we need to experience that degree of unconditional love from someone we can see.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back to, is it Grandpa Larry?
Yeah.
That's
I called him Gramps.
That's a great name. So take me back. What did growing up look like, Gus? So you're in Mesa now. It's clear that you were
born and raised in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I can look back now and I can say I was not a blessed event. I only know half of my family history. And my aunt, who's how old is she now? 91, has told me some things that the seed planter insisted that no, he wasn't the one who got this 19-year-old girl pregnant. And then when he found out that she had a boy, then he came around and wanted to see his son, and the family told him to get lost. So anyway, I was born into a family of two young women, and my grandfather was 45 when I was born, and the woman I knew as my grandmother was his second wife. My mom's mother died when my mom was 14. But anyway, that's who that was. And then I remember growing up in the Marina District in San Francisco, which was a great place to live. I mean, we were a block from a playground, which when I was about 6 was turned into a library, and the playground moved about another block away. So, it was wonderful. I had places to go and play. I guess as I look back on it, I was on a pretty short leash. My mother was very fearful. And as a consequence, I didn't go anywhere by myself, but my grandmother would take me places. What else? When I was born, my grandfather was working for United Airlines. So I can't remember my first flight because my grandmother would, fly down to Southern California to see family and, take the little boy with her.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was great. This was back in the days when they came around and passed out Chiclets chewing gum. I guess because the pressurization in the cabin wasn't as good as it is now. Yeah. That was always one of the great parts of the trip for me.
So, Gus, can you talk about influences in your life as a young boy growing up and growing as you kind of make that transition into your teenage years? You talk about your grandfather and his influence. What were some of those influences like, and how did that impact you both in some of your worldviews and also spiritually? What did that look like? What did religion look like as a young boy?
My family were non-observant Jews. My mother would go to high holy days, twice a year, so she'd schlep me along with her. And when I when I got into junior college that I had an excuse. Can't go, Mom. I'll miss stuff in class. That was nonsense. I didn't want to miss football practice, and I didn't want to go and spend all day in the synagogue.
Right.
I'm a bar mitzvah dropout. But as far as really profitable influence, I don't think that started until my mother married the man I call my dad when I was 11. Because my grandfather was enormously talented and had wasted just about all of it. In stories I've heard, he lost more really, really good jobs than most people are going to have in a lifetime. He lost the job at the airlines for something just petty. And he was, how old? He'd have been about 54, 55 maybe. That was the last good job he had, and he lived to be 95. Mm-hmm. But the man my mom married, Bob Koernig, was raised by his grandfather, who was a real doer. I mean, this guy took care of like his own family, including grown daughters, and countless in-laws through the Depression. When he was how old? In his late 60s, I guess, he tore the roof off the house and put in apartments up there. To increase the income stream.
Yeah.
So my dad was raised by someone who was into achieving, and my dad was too. And so I picked that up from him. He came along at a good time. I was 11, and there are many things he did well that I don't, but that worldview of understanding that we can create more, that we can do and have more than what we see, that we're not on someone else's leash. That's really healthy. As far as worldview and politics, mine are very far from my dad's. I used to tell him he was to the right of Darth Vader.
Well, can we get in? We jump all over any opportunity that we have on this program to talk about the spirit of creativity in our lives.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And what that looks like. And I'm just thinking of the brief time that I've gotten to know you through this conversation. I'm hearing things like author and journalist and photographer. And is it Bob coming into your life that kind of wakes up that desire to develop your talents, or where does that come from?
It could be. What I'm realizing, and this is true of all of us, things we do well, that stuff was already in there. It was always in there. We brought that with us. I didn't start shooting pictures till I was 50, and it turns out I'm pretty good at it. I shot that one that's behind me.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
That's a Japanese garden in Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
My wife and I spent an afternoon there with her sister. Wonderful, wonderful afternoon and a beautiful place. Anyway, how I came to writing, I was always terrified of writing assignments in school. If it was like 200-word paper on whatever, I thought, I don't know 200 words. So I'd have a lot of sentences with very, very, varies in it. And when I was a junior in high school, I was signed up for, some kind of a science class, and I didn't have whatever was the prerequisite for it. So I had a hole in my schedule. I had to get a class. And so I thought, I'll take journalism, which had the reputation at my school of being just a cake class. And the woman who taught it, Miss Valley, Miss Valley was really attractive, and that it was a lot of fun. Well, Miss Valley wasn't teaching journalism anymore. A new teacher, Mr. Coates, was. And Mr. Coates expected us to learn how to write news leads and that sort of thing. It turned out that news writing was something for which I had a talent. Didn't know it, I got an A in the class. Who knew? I will tell you that I later took world literature from Miss Valley, and she got a whole class of seniors in their last semester through War and Peace. Or no, Crime and Punishment.
Oh man!
And we got it.
That's saying something right there.
Yeah, it was pretty terrific. But anyway, that's why I came to writing. As far as writing, fictional writing, I find that, well, a couple of things. One, I do a lot of writing when I'm driving around. I'll hear things in my head, conversations, scenes, dialogue, that sort of thing. And a lot of it is just a download. I'll sit down at my keyboard and I know where a chapter is going to start. I know what circumstance the character is in. And oftentimes, several hours later, I get to the end of that chapter and I realize, okay, I didn't know he was going to do that.
So cool.
Yeah.
I'd heard writers talk about that before I started writing fiction. I accepted it. I didn't think they were lying, but I thought, what the heck is that like? Well, now I know. And that's as well as I can describe it. It's really an experiential thing.
Wow.
Stephen King would talk about, he's got a book called On Writing, and he says it's almost like an archaeological dig.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You see a little something and you start to brush it off, and all of a sudden it goes places, like you said, it goes places that you would have never thought.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that idea. And I love that. I mean, that kind of gives me goosebumps thinking that's the spirit of creativity, right? To take a story that just wasn't there, words in your brain, put on paper, and telling a story that never existed before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty terrific.
Hey, before
creating characters
we get,
and stuff like that.
Gus, before we get too far down this road, how can our listeners connect with work you've done?
My work is on Amazon.
Okay.
I co-authored a book called The Redemption of Lonnie Tate with a fellow named Lauren Marsters, who invited me in, and we created that over several years. That's available on Amazon and at Golden Alley Press, which is my publisher. And I'm currently, I've finished up a sequel to that, and there are some business things that need to get done, and then that will be out. And believe me, I'll let you know when that's available.
Right.
I ghosted about 4 or 5 books, and the last experience was so negative. First I said, okay, anybody ever wants me to ghost again, they're going to have to put up this much money up front before I get started. And then I realized I don't want to do that again. I don't want to tell somebody else's story.
Yeah.
Well, it appears that, I mean, I think I run into people all the time, and I personally feel like there's a book in me. What would you say to the person that hasn't ever got into it, but feels like there's something there?
Sit down at the computer and let it come out through your fingers.
Start typing.
Yeah, pretty much. Have you seen the movie Finding Forrester?
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Movie.
When the Sean Connery character sits down and says, punch the keys, basically just, start writing anything. And as you recall, in the climax of it, the young man starts in kind of plagiarizing this Robert Forster's stuff, and then gets into just this masterful narration. But yeah, just sit down and just start punching the keys.
Yeah.
We're going to have to add that movie to we've already talked a little bit about Field of Dreams with what was happening with Major League Baseball recently. Yeah. We're going to have to add Finding Forrester to the homework list.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Field of Dreams is one of my 3 all-time favorites. I cry in all the same places.
Yeah.
I missed my dad.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a true story. My wife told me that when she first joined the church in South Carolina, where she was raised, one of the real shocks for her was seeing grown men not just expressing emotion, but tearing up, and I mean getting really emotional. And that was not her experience growing up in the Church of Christ and the Baptists and so forth. Well, fast forward a lot of years, she marries one of those guys. I quit apologizing for it years ago.
Yeah.
Oh no, we love those guys.
Yeah, that's a common question in my house at movie night. Dad, are you crying? Yeah, I am.
Yep, as a matter of fact.
I think I've shared this thought with you before, Tyler, but there's a Spanish poem that goes something like, just thinking about being an old man. And there are times in life when you want to cry and you can't. And there are times in life when you don't want to and you can't stop. Right. Yeah. And I think that's, I experience that more and more every day, where it's like, why is that Olympic moment making me bawl like a baby?
Oh yeah. I tear up a half dozen times a day on Facebook.
Well, Gus, I find myself sometimes when I'm experiencing things in my family, starting to get to an embarrassing point where I'm almost like, that person that sits in the pew and is like, amen. Like, I'll get this, I'll be watching a movie, and when it starts to move me, I'll be like, oh, I'll grunt. I'll be like, come on.
Yeah,
right? It's almost like I'm on an episode
where you'll stop hiding it.
Yeah, it's like I'm on an episode of my podcast or something. I can feel like I can just grunt, make noises, because I've been in this space where someone will say something and I'm just like, want to throw my hands up and be like, hallelujah, come on, let's go.
Yeah, right. So Gus, can you take us a little bit into that July 8th, 1971, right? That stage of life. Where are you at, and what leads you where you end up? And
well, let's back up to how I happened to meet the woman who's the mother of my children.
Yeah,
we've been divorced for a while, but I went to BYU knowing nothing about Latter-day Saints or what they believe.
Okay.
Whoa, back up.
Yeah. There's a rich vein, right?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me mine that for you.
Okay.
So I was at City College of San Francisco and not happy about it, but and I was looking for school. Had a good journalism school.
Really quick, where are we at? What year are we in?
This was 1965, 66.
Okay. So San Francisco, 1965, 66 had to be a wild place.
It hadn't gotten there yet. It was about 2 years short of that.
Okay.
Anyway,
good time to get out.
Right. Well, as it turned out, what I told people for years is that BYU was the best journalism school that I could afford, and that would take me with my mediocre grades. And it was 800 miles from where my parents lived, which was a good thing. If it had been 1,600 miles away, it would have been twice as good a thing. What I can see now looking back is I was led there. That was where I had to be to accept the restored gospel. I was baptized between first and second semesters there. And it was a really good thing. I remember on the day I was baptized, the man who I just respect tremendously, I'm sure he's gone now, but he said, "You'll never regret what you've done today." And he was absolutely right. There were years when I doubted my own, dedication or ability or something to live the things I was being taught. But at no time did I ever say, "Man, I wish I hadn't done that." Not only did I not regret it, I've always been grateful for it. And it's had a very salutary effect on my life. A lot of good things have happened to me because of that decision.
Can we I want to keep going down that road of BYU for a second, but before we do that, can we talk a little bit about that process for you? Because it sounds like growing up, religion was there, right?
Kind of.
But it wasn't a major part of life. So what does that look like going into BYU? Obviously, we know the environment is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's falling in at the deep end.
Right. So for you, like, how does that sort of spiritual progression take place where you decide, you know what, I want to do this thing and dive into this?
When I'm even curious too, you said that you felt led there.
Yeah.
Looking back, I can see
right.
that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Okay, so I wind up there and met a girl and thought I was in love, and so I was going to sacrament meeting with her. This was at the time when sacrament meeting was separate from, meetings were separate. There were 2 meetings in the morning, and then there was sacrament meeting in the afternoon or evening. So I was going to sacrament meeting, and my parents had always raised me on the notion of, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So, I mean, you could call it passing or fitting in, whatever. I was not uncomfortable And where, I had to take a religion class, and it was total immersion. And I started praying about it. And please don't get the idea that I was this spiritual seeker at age 18, okay? Because I wasn't. But I guess it was the first day that my roommate and friend I've had since we were Cub Scouts, who also was not a Latter-day Saint, we went to a fireside, which was crazy. I mean, it's early September, and a young guy in the door was, "Oh, you're going to go to the fireside?" And we're thinking, it's 97 outside. What's wrong with you? So we go to the Smithfield House at BYU, and the speaker was Stephen Covey, who was a real pulpit pounder when he was in his 30s. And I had never heard the kinds of things he said. I'd never heard them said in that way. And my buddy, Larkin Noble, Bill Noble, and I felt what was coming off of these people around us. It was like, we didn't say it, but we both knew these people know something we don't know. There's something going on here. Well, so anyway, I would pray from time to time. And
were you in the habit of praying before?
No. I can remember a couple of times when I prayed when I was in a real dark place. I remember once I'd had a really bad bicycle accident and cut up my heel, and I was on crutches for a long time. And I remember praying, "Please help me walk." And then another time I was 11 years old and lying in bed, and the notion hit me, I'm going to die. I mean, not right then, but that someday I was going to die. And I was just overcome with this terrible sadness. And I started sobbing. And my parents came in, and, so I did what 11-year-old boys do. I lied. My stomach hurts. I mean, who's going to say when you're 11 years old, "I'm afraid of dying, Mom and Dad"?
Yeah, but where does that
would not have been well received.
But that's an amazing sentiment. That's an amazing fact, because I don't know 11-year-olds that feel that way.
Don't know where it came from, but here's where it went. So, well, go use the bathroom. Well, I didn't have to use the bathroom, but I mean, it was a private place. And while I was in there, I remember praying, "Please, God, don't let me die." And I felt this assurance that I would not. Well, what I can see now is I was being instructed that when life ends here, life does not end. And that didn't click for me until, years after I had joined the church.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. So
just a little nugget given to an 11-year-old.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Awesome.
So those are my two prayer experiences. So anyway, it's Christmas time, late 1965, and I'm driving a fuel truck for the company my father worked for in the Central Valley, and it's foggy and it's miserable, and I'm having this. There was no radio in the truck, so I'm having this internal conversation about okay, well, there's various points of the gospel. So, the missionaries say this, and they say this, and they say this, and I would have that conversation previously, and I think, okay, but is it true? And at that moment, okay, the missionaries say this, and they say this, and they say this, and it's true. And I slammed on the brakes, and it was a 2-lane road out in the middle of nowhere. So fortunately, nobody slammed into me. But I realized something had happened. That was a pivotal point. And that was when I knew, okay, I want to be baptized. And a month after I turned 19, I was.
In between first and second semester.
Yeah. Yep. And I didn't do it to get a break on tuition, which one of the guys in the dorm accused me of.
What did your family think?
My dad, who was not at all religious, said, "Well, good." My mother, who was not religious but who was culturally Jewish, said, "Well, wait, honey, wait till you're sure." I said, "I'm sure now, Mom." And she said, "Well, wait until you're really sure." I said, "Mom, I'm not telling you this. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you this because I love you and it's the right thing to do, but I'm not waiting." So yeah, then I I was baptized and felt very much out of my depth. And here's the thing, I mentioned earlier about, constantly giving my children the message, you're not okay, in various and sundry ways. And I got that too. And so now this was something else to not feel okay about. I'm quote, a Mormon, and I'm around these other Mormon kids, but I don't know what they know. They're better Mormons than I am. So that was another thing to feel, maybe it's 4,000 years of Jewish self-doubt. I don't know.
But at a genetic level.
Yeah, I guess. But again, it's a process. And as I found things that I did well, I guess it was some ammunition to kind of tamp down that insecurity, or I don't know, self-loathing might be too strong, but kind of going in that direction. So anyway,
can I ask a question, Gus?
Sure, by all means.
So you're a new member of the church. I joined the church in 19, so I'm kind of putting myself right. I wasn't in Provo, Utah.
Yeah.
Right, in a sea of people.
Yeah.
That supposedly believe the same, right? I mean, there are non-members in Provo. You were evidence of that. But did you have early experiences, maybe with a leader or a mentor, or fellowshipping, or alone in a room with the Book of Mormon or prayer, where you felt like God knew you?
I did.
Like knew you.
When I can remember the moment I came up out of the water after being baptized in a pool in the Richards PE building. I felt better in that moment than I ever had before, and I have never felt better than that since. I have had that feeling that good at the births of my children, both times getting married. So yeah, I guess I did feel some close. I'll tell you what really appealed to me was being called brother. I'm an only child, and when people of my parents or grandparents' generation said, "Okay, brother," wow, that really went to the center of me. And there were times, and have been times, when things were not good, and I have felt a physical sensation of arms around me, and knowing that my Father was there. Yeah, I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And for those that are listening, for ourselves as individuals as well, like, it just goes to that idea that there are these moments. It's not the constant.
Right.
Yeah. You can be baptized, a member of the church, receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. And we talk about that constant companionship of the Holy Ghost, but there are flashes, right? Almost like going back to Steinbeck and East of Eden, right? These glories, these moments that we have.
Well, and it's something that you mentioned a moment ago, when we were confirmed, we were, quote, given the gift of the Holy Ghost. What we're given is an admonition.
Receive.
We are told, receive the Holy Ghost. It's up to us. So I'm sure that's why, as you say, it comes and goes.
Yeah, on my wall in my office, I've got this weeks of my life, and every week I fill a box, right? And I'm just reminding myself that this is a finite game, that eventually I will die, right? Eventually I'm going to run out of weeks, but I've decided to not just fill them in. I've gone back, and certain weeks are purple, right? So when coworkers come into my office and like, well, that's kind of cool. And they're like, what's that one? I was like, well, let me tell you about that one. That week I met a girl. Well, what's that one? Oh, let me tell you about that one. That week I had a daughter, right? Like there's these moments that are not like every other moment. And that's what really keeps us in this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he said, you will never regret what you did here.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great gift that I was given. Just that.
Well, and I find I'm just putting the two together because we started earlier talking about regret.
Yeah.
And you said it can be crippling.
It can.
And how many of us are walking around with crippling things and there's no hook on the thing we're holding on to?
Yeah.
We're holding on to it.
Right. Yeah.
Like you said, cast it out. Let it go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Be done with that thing.
One thing that my wife talks about, she does a lot of personal development, and she's in a number of like support groups, professional groups, and they do Zoom meetings and stuff, and I'll listen in, and I mean it's really good stuff. But anyway, what she talks about is the need to embrace the things that we do well, and for me it's more than just, because I was always able to separate the things that I do well professionally from where I was personally. It was like, okay, yeah, I write well and I'm good on TV, but we need to embrace the things we do well, and we need to also embrace the effect we have on other people, because we don't recognize that.
Yeah.
I was the guy on TV in a small community for 19 years. And I would see, men of my parents' generation who were far more accomplished than I. And I mean, it's like their eyes would mist up being in my presence. I'm thinking, come on, I just have a high profile job. Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't know what effect we have on people. Let me share this with you. This is something that just occurred to me yesterday, actually. When I was, must have been in my early 40s, I looked around at several of my contemporaries, and I felt like they were much further along in life than I was, because they were doing so much better financially. And it was like, what am I doing wrong? Well, one guy was an oral surgeon, a couple of others were attorneys, one was an insurance broker. And I thought, well, fine. And here I am, relating the unfolding history of the community and the world in 90-second installments. Big deal. But what hit me, and before I brought this up, to my wife, the one I was married to at that time, was I was doing what I was good at, and I had no interest or aptitude for the things these men were doing. I don't have a scientific aptitude that I could have gone through medical school and become an oral surgeon. I did not have the diligence and the dedication to get through 3 years of law school. The things that are involved in insurance, while they're important, bore me silly. But the talents that I had been given were being used in a way that, yes, I was relating the unfolding history of the community and the world, but I was doing it in a way that people could understand, and in a way that didn't scare the liver out of it.
Yeah.
We need some of that today.
Well, people told me that when they watched me on the news, they got the feeling that, well, we'll get through it somehow. It'll be okay.
That's an interesting point, though, Gus, because I think that, that idea, Mike, we've talked about this before, this idea of comparison, right?
Oh, yeah.
It just diminishes everything that we have or we are, right?
Yeah.
Here you are, successful in your field, magnifying your talents in that arena. Yeah. And you look at someone else who maybe is getting a bigger paycheck, magnifying their talents. You think, well, gosh, they're better than me.
But what if we flipped it, right? What if you're sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had his paycheck. And the guy with the paycheck is looking at you doing what you were born to do, saying, I wish my work lit me up like he is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And of course that's happening, right? Of course that's happening, but we don't.
I look at the things that I've gotten to do as a broadcast journalist that, let me tell you the story this way. I remember as a little boy, I'd see people on TV and go, I'm going to be on TV, I'm going to be a jet pilot. I'm going to be a baseball player. I'm going to whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember my grandmother saying, well, honey, people don't really do that. And I'd point at the TV and go,
someone's doing it.
Right. Well, what she was saying was people like us don't do that.
Mm.
Okay. So fast forward, I'm in my 40s. I get to spend a day working out with a professional baseball team. I get to ride with the Blue Angels. I get to,
come on.
Yeah.
True story. I get to ride into Billings, Montana for the Centennial Cattle Drive with all these cowboys. I was on television for 30 years. And the things I got to do, I got to go to Russia right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I was never jaded about that. I'm sitting there in the Bolshoi Theater watching opera and thinking, what am I doing here? I'm a kid from the Marina District.
Right.
Okay. It was a wonderful, exciting career.
Okay, Gus, there are a couple of places I just need to go really quick.
Sure.
Okay. First, let's go with the most recent thing you just shared. When they try to tell you that, people like us don't do that, right? I refer to that as lids on kids, right? I'm in education, I just don't believe. And we have programs, we have policies, we have things that put lids on kids, and that's just something that I kind of wage war on on a daily basis. But how did you rip that lid off? Because you're an impressionable kid. You see something that you want to do, and immediately, and maybe unintentionally, but that is snuffed out. It could have been.
I didn't believe it, I guess. Like a lot of American boys, I always wanted to be a cowboy. So I married a woman from Montana. His grandfather was a cowboy. True story.
Okay,
the guy was a cattleman.
So second thought that I would like to, like you said, a rich vein I'd like to mine a little bit.
Yeah.
When when you see the effect that you are having, right? You're on TV and you kind of got that celebrity thing, and people are kind of losing their stuff when they're around you. Tyler and I were talking the other day about not believing the hype.
Exactly. Yeah.
What advice do you have? Like, I struggle. I think when people come up to us and they're complimentary, part of me says, don't listen to that or you'll get proud. Right. But then part of me wants to be sincere and take that praise. Like, talk me through that wrestle.
It's important to accept compliments, whether you're doing something high profile or whatever it is you're doing. Say, oh, well, it's not whatever. And it's like what you were referring to a few minutes ago, Ty, about, looking at other people and comparing ourselves. I don't know. I mentioned the 4,000 years that you were self-doubt thing. I'm with me all the time. We are with ourselves in our worst moments. Right. So when the good stuff just gets smeared on really, really heavy, it's important to be gracious and to say thank you. But it also helps to remember that maybe we hit that particular shot, but we missed 7 before that.
That's right. I appreciate that. Thank you for that thought. So you're in BYU, you're a member of the church. Mm-hmm. How do you how do you make that choice of all the things you could do in the world, of all the degrees you could get, right? To walk me through the choice to do what you did there at BYU and finish.
Actually, what I wound up doing, it played some on what I did at BYU. I didn't graduate.
Okay.
I was a terrible student. I didn't know how to study. I tell people I arrived at college with no study skills and less self-discipline.
We could hang out, Gus.
Yeah. I experienced academic success in my 60s.
I showed up to college and had 15 units my first semester, and I finished with a C in philosophy.
Good. When my first wife left, I enrolled at Mesa Community College. That was one of the reasons that she left. She said I'd enrolled, for classes without discussing it with her. Translate, asking permission. Anyway, so it gets toward the end of the first semester, and I'm looking at what's going on. I'm thinking, I could get straight A's here. I never had a semester in which I got straight A's going back to elementary school. Well, I had 3 semesters at Mesa Community College, and I had nothing but A's. What that did is it changed how I look at myself. It changed how I see myself. At 62, 63, whatever I was, I saw myself as a straight A person. And that's healthy.
Yeah. I like that. I'm curious, you talk about changing how we see ourselves. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think that, right, it's the self-talk we have, right? Mm-hmm. We wrap ourselves up into, this is what I am. It goes back to that, I am what I am and I cannot change, right?
Yeah.
Because we haven't seen anything else.
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who's sitting in that position that says, look, I'm not this, or I'm not that, and I can never be this, or I can never be that? I mean, what would you tell that person?
Look back at where you were 5 years ago and where you are now.
I like that. Yeah.
There's this school of thought that
5 year look back.
Look ahead. What you did, yeah, fine, but there's more work to do. Well, of course, there's always more work to do. But I think we need to fuel ourselves on what we have accomplished. I was talking earlier about, hoping that I'm a better person today than I was a year ago, and that I'll be a better person a year from now than I am today. It's really important to look at the things that we have accomplished. And everyone accomplishes things. Everyone does. We get better at what we do. We get better at some of the things we do.
So right. Did I catch that timeline right? How old are you at Mesa Community College?
I was 62.
And I'm assuming as you're looking around, there may not be too many 62-year-olds in your classes.
There weren't a lot of 62-year-old teachers. In three semesters, I had one instructor who was older than me. But here's what's really cool. I'm in class with people who are, the ages, not just the ages of my children, ages of my grandchildren. And, I thought, holy cow, am I going to be like Pierce on Community, Not only did no one regard me that way, but these folks just accepted me like I was one of the other students. And it was wonderful. It was hugely complimentary, I felt.
Yeah.
Tyler, as I'm listening to that, I'm reminded of that exchange you had with that girl that was struggling and just had so much on her plate, and she was shooting herself all over the place. Like, I should be here. I should have these things, and the timeline and the pressure. And you just said, hey, let's just take that timeline off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that idea too of like, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like, I'm too late. Right. That opportunity is past. And Gus, you're living proof here that no.
Yeah.
There's a life to live, right? And you don't quit until you're done.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of things, not only that I want to do, but that I expect to do. There are things out there ahead of me. And for one thing, I mean, yeah, we're all on the clock, but as I mentioned earlier, my grandfather lived to be 95. And it's not because he ate right, exercised, or took care of himself. He did none of those things. I mentioned my aunt who's 91. Well, my mother turned 94 in June. There's longevity in my family. So, it's not like I've got time, so I don't have to worry about any sense of urgency, but it's not a sense of time's running out.
Yeah, because I think that in life, right, and maybe in our society, it's this idea that we have this ramping up period to where we get to this ramping down period.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to get to a place where we don't do anything now because we've done everything over here. And I love the idea of that. It's just a big ramp up. Let's just keep going, just keep pushing it forward,
Well, and I love that too, because there's no fear in the ramp up.
Yeah.
We talked about that love and living in love and living in fear. I believe that that's dark and light, right? Those are polar opposites.
Absolutely.
You can't be both.
Yep.
And so I can sit here and like, oh no, death is coming. And is anybody else catching the irony, right? Gus, as an 11-year-old kid, was afraid to die.
Yeah.
And now Gus is like, bring this on. I'm going to suck the nectar out of this all the way out.
Absolutely. I got a lot more to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have, there are a number of books that I have that I know how they begin and the end. and then the stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
I have writing to do. There are more pictures to make. One of the things in the cheat sheet that you fellows sent me was, if I couldn't fail, what would I do? That one's easy. I would travel and write and make photographs. And that's coming.
Yeah.
What's the ratio on that failure? I think failure is part of it. I think when we talk to people about what they're afraid of, a lot of folks in our conversations talk about fear, but looking at photography, looking at books, looking at writing, what's the ratio? How many pictures you got to take to find a great one, and the rest end up in the garbage?
And it's even more than that. If you're talking about monetizing it, there's a fella here in the Valley who does workshops and trains people to, turn their pictures into money. And one thing that he wrote some years ago, he said, a bad picture marketed well will sell much better than a great picture marketed poorly. So that's the issue, is how do you
power of marketing?
How do you monetize what you do? You got to get it in front of people.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think back, Gus. I think about your comments about these things that you want to accomplish and that you want to do. And Mike, it sort of brings me back to that initial conversation of change, because I think when we're in a ramping up period, right, where change is coming at us all the time. And maybe there's this idea that we want to get down to this ramping down period, because then change goes away, right? It becomes this safe zone where nothing is going to happen that's going to impact us. But where's the life in that, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Where is the energy and the creativity and the, when we're ramping up and we're pushing ahead and change is coming at us, we're forced to adapt. We're forced to embrace the process that makes us be better at whatever it is we're trying to be better at.
Yeah.
Well, that gets me thinking, Tyler, that gets me thinking of right now in my personal study of the Book of Mormon, I'm in that 2 Nephi 2, and we are free to act and not be acted upon.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The ramp down is acted upon.
Yeah.
I'm going to let life's going to come at me and I'm going to be reactive. Right. But like ramping up is like, no, I'm going to continually act. The pen is in my hand. I write how this story ends.
Yeah.
I dictate things. And there are things out of our control, and I understand that's part of living, but we are active participants driving this thing, and we're not just like, can you please stop talking to me about change? I'm done. I just want to finish this thing on a coast.
And we see people who do that.
Yeah.
I make a point of not spending any time around it.
Right. Right. Oh, I love that. And I also love the idea of of a process, because if you look at Gus, you talk about writing and photography and these creative things that you're doing. I'm imagining there's a process in there, right? Of honing your craft, of becoming better, right? Of that. And then I think about, some of the things that you said earlier regarding religion and joining the church and sort of that there's a process in there as well, right? I think there's a belief somewhere that once you hit, I don't know if it's baptism or wherever it's at, that you've peaked, right? And I think and again, I go back to this idea of this just ramping up, right? We have to be continually in that process of looking. Maybe we got to be looking for change. Is that what is that part of this?
Or being open to it.
Or being open to it, yeah.
Yeah.
We got to remarket. We have to rebrand, because you're right, Tyler. We have this enduring to the end thing.
Yeah.
Right. I've got a nephew who's getting married. Right. So Gus, I'm a Cubs fan. I'm going to go to Wrigley for the first time.
He knows all about endurance, right?
He's marrying an Indiana girl. So our bags are packed next week, and we're going to be going and doing that thing. I just wonder what's in his head right now, right? Is he thinking, okay, this leads to this, get married, and now we endure, right? Or is he like,
I don't think that's what he's thinking. But
let the freaking adventure begin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and the problem
Well, we know what
the problem with the notion of enduring to the end is it sounds really grim.
It absolutely. I always
felt that.
Every time I read that, I'm like,
you grit your teeth and you just hang on to this thing.
Right.
No, the journey is supposed to be joyful.
That's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. I agree with that. So.
Hey, Gus, where you are right now, as you think about the experiences that you've had, can you name something that you have learned from life the hard way?
Ooh. Things you say in anger and things you do in anger are poisonous and 100% not productive at all, ever. Here's another one. Bad advice by itself is not harmful. Bad advice is harmful when you follow it. There are things that advice I follow. Oh, you should do this because this is an opportunity. Well, it's an opportunity for the right person. I tried for a couple of years to make a success of network marketing, and I'm not going to badmouth network marketing. I know people who do it who are very successful at it. It requires certain skills or certain aptitude. If you cannot sell, you're not going to be good at network marketing. I don't have that gene. I don't have the closer gene. And I've seen people who are very good at sales. And this is interesting. The ones who are really good are not what society thinks of as a salesperson. They're not high pressure. Your dad, Tyler, your dad's an excellent salesman. He's not high pressure.
Yeah.
My wife is very successful in real estate. She is about as far from high pressure as it gets. The quiet farmer's daughter from South Carolina, who also happens to be the smartest person in the room all the time. But you should do this. Well, more often than not, people don't know what you should do.
Yeah.
People can open up stuff, but the idea of, here, I'll give you an example of that. I was in a Temple Recommend interview when I was about 25 and with a man who was very successful in insurance. He was an insurance broker. And I forget what it was I wanted to do then, but he wasn't impressed with it. Anyway, he told me how when he came back from his mission, he didn't know what he wanted to do. So he sat down with, and I don't know if they were all together or, one after another, with men who were successful, who his parents knew and grandparents knew, and listened to what these men said and took their advice and went from that. Well, it turned out to be very good for him. I remember thinking at 25, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Well, I can tell you at 73, it doesn't sound a lot better to me. Now, it worked out well for this man, but, who's to say that, I know you should do this. Well, no, maybe I should do that if I were in your position.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I like that. I like that idea. We talked earlier about, just knowing our strengths and embracing, embracing the things that we're good at. It's interesting that as I'm listening to you talk about that, I've got a son who's serving a mission and a daughter who's up at BYU, and I've got all kinds of opinions, Gus, of how they should be living their lives. So maybe I need to rethink how I deliver those things. Right.
Yeah.
Hey, can I be personal really quick?
Sure.
So I have a daughter serving a mission in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and Gus, what you said about loving, that really hit. In fact, I kind of wanted to jump off the call and record a voice memo for her. A couple of days ago, we were on the call, and she was talking about how the summer was cooking, right? Humid, hot in the city. Nobody's out on the streets. And she said it was slow. And I said, how's the finding going? And the way she looked at me was like, I'm saying, that's not okay, Grace. And after this call, I'm going to record a voice memo to make sure she understands that I love her.
Yeah.
And that it's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from. I know where it came from. I know as a missionary, I was miserable when I wasn't teaching, and I don't want my daughter to be miserable.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's where the face came from.
Yep.
But the way she looked at me when I asked that question, I wasn't a proud dad moment right there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that rule, right? You want the rule for raising happy kids? Here's the list.
Yeah.
Love them.
Love them. That's it.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Love 'em.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And good that you see it as quickly as you did.
Well, it's 2 days old.
But still,
well,
that could be the kind of thing that someone does.
That's a lie.
That's the kind of thing someone looks back 20 years on for. Gosh, I wish I
should
hadn't
have
said that.
Yeah, but that's a lie. It's not 2 days old. I knew I needed to do this yesterday.
Yeah.
And it didn't get done. Right. So we'll get it.
Yeah.
We'll get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Can we talk a little bit about Glenda?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How does Glenda come in your life? And talk to me a little bit about that second chapter.
Glenda came into my life online. What the heck was it called? LDS Singles, Match.com for Mormons. And
I'm glad you didn't say Tinder.
Yeah, no. And well, this is interesting. I was on Match and met an LDS woman there, and it was like this whirlwind thing, and we're engaged, and we got disengaged. It did not end well, but I looked at the circumstance afterward, and I thought, man, I've seen that movie before. I've been in that movie. I don't like that movie. I don't like how it ends. And so I went on a fast. It was the only time in my life that I didn't want female companionship. I just stepped back from it. And one of my daughters, my daughter Erica, who's now in her 40s and with grown sons and a 12-year-old daughter, is a student at the University of Utah. But anyway, she said, make a list, Dad. Make a list of what you want in the woman you want to marry. So she was after me about that for weeks. Dad, you make your list? No, I didn't make my list. Make your list, Dad. So finally I did. I sat down and, wrote it in a couple of bursts. And I thought, okay, I got to transcribe this or I won't be able to read it. So I sat down and I transcribed it. There were 55 items on my list. Yes, I'm a little OCD here. And
you ask a writer to write a list, you're going to get a list of 55 things.
As it turned out. Well, as it also turns out, of the 55 things on my list, Glenda is 53 of them. She doesn't play tennis and she doesn't ski. It was about the third time we were out, I think, which was like about 3 times in 4 days. And I mentioned the list. She said, "You ever let me see this list you're talking about?" I said, yeah, there's one in the glove box. We'd been hiking up at, it doesn't matter where we're hiking anyway. So she looks it over and she goes, "I hit pretty high on a lot of these." The line in Jerry Maguire when Dorothy says, "You had me at hello." Glenda had me at "but of course." We were emailing and I said, "Can I phone you?" And she replied, "But of course." And I called, we talked for about 45 minutes. We went to dinner, spontaneously set up another date where we went and, browsed through Phoenix Art Museum and talked about ourselves. And then the actual date we had set up was to go hiking on a Saturday. And I remember thinking we went hiking at a place called Tato Natural Bridge. And when we're in this one spot, I remember thinking, wow, this lady is really game. Glenda's 5'1". And we're in this area where you got to kind of step around this big boulder. Well, I'm 5'10". It's not that big a deal. She really struggled getting around. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This lady's really game. Well, she told me probably a couple of years after we got married, she said, "I thought you were testing me." She said, "I couldn't walk without hurting till Wednesday."
Well, she passed the test, right?
Yeah, as it turned out. So anyway, we first went out on like September 4th or 5th, and we got married on October 26th. And,
wow.
You say, wow, that's really compressed. Well, yeah, but I mean, we were together every night.
Yeah.
And, we'd both been married, and we knew what we did not want, and we knew what we did want. And so at nearly 65, I married the love of my life. And it's been nothing but good. She's funny, she's smart.
Sounds like she needs to get on the show.
She would be wonderful on your show.
Yeah,
she would. Yeah, I mean, she's the farmer's daughter from Greenwood, South Carolina. And what she would tell you is she was raised in the South. She is not a Southerner. I mean, she's lived a lot of places. She lived in Germany for 3 years. Or, when we were having dinner the first time we were together, I said, I don't hear any regionalism when you speak. She said, well, I was an Army wife for 10 years. Well, what she has told me since is when she was probably in, I don't know, maybe 7th or 8th grade, she decided she was not going to talk like the people around her.
Oh,
she,
really?
was not going to talk like her parents who were from Northern Alabama, or her classmates who are from South Carolina. There are times when she relaxes, it comes out, but she keeps it on a pretty tight leash. I've never heard her say y'all. I say y'all more than she does.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, she's.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. She's the most remarkable person I've ever met.
I love that, Gus. We're big on honoring people in this show, and you've talked about a lot of influential people in your life. Is there anyone that you'd like to take a moment and honor?
Yes.
In this space.
As a matter of fact, I would. I would like to honor my first wife, Vicki Lee Koernig. She is, to this moment, the most influential person in my life. There are things that I do that I would not have gotten into without her more than encouragement. Okay, this was a case of you should do this that was absolutely correct. She said, you should look into broadcasting school. Well, I did. And, it's led to a career in broadcasting that started in 1975, and here we still are.
Yeah.
She does, well, she and Glenda both do more things well than any of the people I know. I mean, they're very different in a lot of ways, but both very smart, so I would definitely, want to honor Vicki. We're cordial when we see each other. In fact, she and her man live about less than 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I have 9 children.
And are they scattered? Are they all?
They're actually, it's kind of like target shooting. They're grouped.
Clustered.
Yeah, there are 2 here in the Valley. There are 2 in Carlsbad, California. There are 2 in Billings, Montana, and there are 3 in the Salt Lake Valley.
So they're in pods.
Yeah.
Those are also pretty good places to go visit too.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
When I lived in Montana, and I would hear people say, "Oh, it's so sad when the kids move away," and I'd think, "No, it's not. I mean, you get to go places."
That's true.
My oldest daughter and her family lived in outside Charlotte, North Carolina, for about 5 years. I'd have never gone to Charlotte if she hadn't been there. Having 2 daughters in North County, it's a bad time if I'm not getting over there every few months.
Yeah, right.
And it's an easy drive.
Yeah, that is an easy drive.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Were there others that you was there anyone else that you would like to honor in this space?
A man named Art Rosenbaum, who has since passed away. He was the sports director at the San Francisco, or sports editor at the San Francisco Chronicle. That was my first job in journalism. I was 18 years old, and they paid me to pay attention to sports. I mean, that was a die and go to heaven job for an 18-year-old.
Yeah,
right. Doing it for nothing. The journalism advisor at City College of San Francisco recommended me for the job. My predecessor as sports department copy boy had gone to dinner one night and didn't come back. I don't think anything bad happened to him, but they never saw the kid again. Anyway,
wow.
So,
their loss is your gain, literally.
It is, absolutely. If somebody took him out, I need to send him a thank you. So anyhow, Art was on vacation when I was hired, and he came back, met, and he brought a news release over to my desk and said, yeah, give me one paragraph on this, and when you get it done, just bring it over to me. And, So I said, oh, okay. Well, I was the star writer from high school and junior college. I knocked this thing out, bring it over to him, and Art looks at it and he goes, oh yeah, this is good. Yeah. Well, I'm just floating. And he takes, a copy pencil about as big as my thumb. He said, but I wonder if maybe here, if instead of this, first sentence is gone. We could maybe say this. He writes 6 words. He goes through the thing, and the only thing original when he gets to the end was the period. That was the only period at the end of the graph that I'd put there. That was it. So yeah, just retype that with those few changes that I made, and then just have him send that back to the composer. Well, he wasn't being sarcastic, Well, I trudged back to my desk and I typed this up. I was like, I'm never going to be a decent sports writer, ever. Well, over the next, I don't know, maybe month, every once in a while, he'd give me a sheet, a press release. Here, rewrite this for me. Well, with the second one, I was starting to dread it. And in each one, he would change less. Well, the last one, he looked at it and said, yeah, good. And he said, oh, and from now on, when I give you something, don't bring it over to me. Just, rewrite it and give it to them so they can send it back. It was a learning moment.
Yeah.
Another man who's since passed on, Roy Gibson was his name. He was a news director at a TV station in Salt Lake City, and later a professor of journalism at the University of Utah. I applied for a job, and he talked to me about the difference between writing for the eye and writing for the ear. And I nodded my head like I knew what he was talking about. And he gave me some copy to rewrite. And he said, yeah, just send this up to me and, we'll see where it goes. Well, I, typed it up and sent it up. And he sent it back and he said, this is good print copy, but I couldn't use this on TV. And here's why. Well, I didn't get the job, but I got a wonderful lesson. And when I got into TV, I didn't know I wanted to be in television. I wasn't looking for a job. But I decided I wanted to be a TV sportscaster. And I started writing for television. I'd had that wonderful lesson from Roy Gibson on how to write for the ear instead of writing for the eye. And I mean, here we are, got to be close to 50 years on, and I still remember that. And those are very pivotal experiences in my life.
Gus, what gives you hope these days?
I know who wins. Elder Holland talks about, we know which team's going to win. It's just a question of which jersey we want to wear. I believe that things in my life will get better because they always have. When my first marriage was really circling the drain, I remember praying one night and saying, Heavenly Father, we can't go on another 40 years like this. This cannot be what you have in mind for us. And the next day, my wife told me she was leaving. Yeah, okay, that sounds, glib and nasty and snotty. Answer a prayer. But we'd stopped being good for each other at all. And that was very much an answer to a prayer. And good things happened in my life. It was a couple of years before I met Glenda, but I had the experience at Mesa Community College. I met people that I would not have met otherwise. That's what gives me hope. Things in my life always get better. Not immediately. And I don't, I'm not a patient person. One thing I'm struggling with right now, I had 2 hip replacement surgeries. And I'm finding after the second one, the recovery is different than the first one. It's like I can't get enough sleep. And the physical therapist that I'm seeing, and I had a conversation with someone from the surgeon's office, and I explained what's going on. And she said, yeah, that's about how that is. And the physical therapists say, you're making great progress. Glenda tells me I'm making great progress. Yeah, but I want to feel right now today the way I'm going to feel in 2 months.
Yeah, right.
Which is nuts. But I mean, even at that, things are better. The last time I flew, which was March of last year, I had all I could do to put my feet on the yellow feet that you're supposed to stand on when they x-ray you, because the arthritis in my hips was so severe. I got to a point I couldn't stand on my feet more than about 8 inches apart.
Wow.
Well, that's changed. And no, I'm not where I want to be, but I can feel the difference. So things in my life are getting better. I'm living in the nicest home that I've ever lived in. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable. It has the space we need. There are no stairs, which gets to be a bigger deal all the time. For years, there was a guy who was the high priest group leader in Billings, Montana, my ward there. And he would tell this story about every 2 weeks about how he was driving with someone and he'd see someone and he'd say, oh, there's my best friend, and it was his wife, and he'd wave and get some other stories, man. But what also bothered me is that I wasn't married to my best friend, nor was she. Well, I'm married to my best friend now. And it's remarkable. I don't tell that story all the time like my friend Alan did, but it's nice having that assurity. Yeah, I just look out into the future and I see good things.
I love that outlook. You talk about things in life will get better because they always have.
Yeah.
And we have that. We started off today talking about change.
Yeah.
And it's inevitable, right? It's going to come at us in all aspects of our lives, and we have a choice to make on how we deal with that change and how we react to that. And sometimes, admittedly, I'm better than others, in accepting that change. But I love that outlook of, and again, going back to a point you made earlier too, Gus, about looking back and seeing the successes, identifying the successes, and then understanding there's a pattern there.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Even though things are rough now, I've had successes, and things moving forward will be good.
Yeah.
Well, and Tyler, let's connect that. Let's connect that to that thought that you and I had before Gus came on, of just like, if there are people that are feeling hopeless, perhaps looking back, you'll see some things. You'll see some lessons given to you when you're 11-year-old, right? You'll see some evidence that the hand of God is leading you along, and Gus, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today and just that journey.
Thank you. This has been great. It's been I hope I didn't ramble too many times.
No, you kidding me? Like I could just wipe the schedule for the rest of the day and hang out with you. I'm thinking of you being an 11-year-old kid and saying, right, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And that
I can remember right now the passion I felt then.
Yeah, that leads me to be thinking of our guy George Bailey on the bridge, right?
Yeah.
I want to live again.
Yeah.
Right? I want to live again. Life was messy, right? Life is messy for all of us.
Oh, it is.
But in that spirit of I want to live again, we know how the movie ends. We end our podcast every week with that same thought, right? George Bailey's surrounded by friends and family, and his little brother comes home, war hero, right?
Yeah.
And he raises the glass and says to my big brother George, the richest man in town. And so, Gus, I'm dying to know, in your mind, from where you sit, looking back, looking ahead, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
we're into that old man cries thing territory. I am a word guy, but I don't have words to describe how gratifying that is. The kindness and the respect that I feel from the two of you. And Ty, gosh, we've got history. We talked about that. It means the world. You know, we're with ourselves all the time. So we see ourselves at our worst. And when someone sees more than the worst in us and draws that out, it's very therapeutic. Fills my heart.
I'm going to let that
wash over us for a minute.
I'm going to let that wash over, man. That's not dead air. That air is very alive.
Yeah. And I would say to you, Gus, you know, it's been fun to spend the last couple hours talking and hearing about the journey, as Mike said, because, you know, as we talk, the richness of your life is apparent, right? And the blessings that are in your life and are apparent. And I love the lessons that you taught today. And you know, one of the things that's interesting with this podcast is that Mike and I, we get the opportunity to hear from people that listen to our guests, right? And they send us emails and texts and social media messages, and I guarantee that someone's going to listen to you and find that nugget of truth that's going to spur them to take the next step and move forward. I just love some of the lessons today that you've taught that I'm looking forward to implementing in my own journey.
Goodness.
So I appreciate that.
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
And for me too, one thing, maybe this is just to tie it up, for all the challenges and, you know, all the things right now that I wish weren't, but are, I like my life. And I can honestly say it's good to be me.
Well, Gus, it's good to know you.
Yeah.
We've never met. It's a crazy world, 2021, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I feel like I'd go to battle with you. And that's a common feeling that we have at the end of this. And when people ask me, you know, what does the Holy Ghost feel like? I know when I'm feeling the Holy Ghost, when I'm learning things as I'm talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you say something, go, how did I know that? I didn't know I knew that.
I've had that experience where I've been reminded of some eternal truths in our time together. And I'm gonna commit to you to honor the lessons that you've given me and try to go be my best self. Because I can honestly tell you, Gus, I feel like you're trending and you're your best self right now. You know, we talk to people all the time that are like, oh yeah, my best self was 20 years ago. Dang it, that's offensive.
It is.
Amen.
Yeah,
that's offensive.
That
Let's go
offensive.
be our best self right now with the day
right.
the opportunity that's been
right.
given.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you so much. That was a home run into the corn.
Thank you, fellas.
It was a blast. Love you. Appreciate you, and look forward to further conversations in the future.
Oh, look forward to it myself. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Gus. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.